4850 or tweet at LBC. Donna Hales joins me now, an NHS nurse and member of the campaign group Nurses United. Donna, very good evening to you. Let's start with those. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. Let's start with those comments Therese Coffey made. Your response to them, Donna?
I think, first of all, Ben, you summarised things really nicely and raised some very important questions that we need to direct at Theresa Coffey. To be honest, I'm incredibly appalled. I can't really repeat in public what my real thoughts are on this situation, but this woman is entirely out of touch with what's going on in the NHS at the moment. If she had a little chat with her cabinet member now, Jeremy Hunt, she will see that he's been sat on the Commons Health and Social Care Committee for the last couple of years. It's a cross-party committee, and that committee themselves have been warning for 2 years about retention and recruitment of NHS staff, and talking about burnout and talking about the impact on NHS staff of a system that is just working on overdrive at the moment.
What is it? Let's get into the specifics, Donna, of why nurses are leaving the profession in their thousands. Is it pay that's the main issue? Is it morale? Are they overworked? Obviously, it's all of the above. But what is the fundamental driving factor in your experience?
A burnout. It's quite simply burnout. You know, people are working overtime, people are missing their breaks, people aren't getting annual leave on time, we're not able to do some training courses at times because there isn't enough staff to release you to do those things. You know, the whole idea about the nursing profession is we're a really skilled, dedicated profession. You know, you can't just replace us with somebody that works in McDonald's, but, you know, I know people that are going working in cafes and doing other jobs as nurses because the working conditions are better and actually the pay is better. It's not just about pay, but pay is very important in this because, you know, we've had austerity, we've had a horrific pandemic. You know, 1,600 healthcare professionals died during that pandemic, and the kind of pressure that staff were under during that time was enormous. You'd have to be there, Ben, to really understand it and to hear those stories from people that were working on those COVID wards and ITU to understand how difficult it was for them. Now we've come back into things, trying to run as normal with a huge backlog, which is now topping 7 million. A couple of months ago, it was about 5.4 million. And we're getting asked to increase our targets, work harder, and actually try and get rid of the backlog. We want to be able to care for our patients. We want to get rid of these backlogs, but we haven't got enough staff. Now, Theresa Coffey, in my mind, is being very naive. You know, a nurse isn't just a nurse. You have different levels of nurses. You have different skill mix. You have different requirements. Our wards are running on quite junior staff at the moment with a real drop-off in more senior nurses. So you haven't got that really adequately trained skill mix, and that is so vital to what we need. Morale is incredibly low, Ben. You know, it's so hard to explain. And the other thing that we're seeing, and certainly the job that I work with long-term conditions, my patients are getting frustrated at having to wait on waiting lists. My patients are getting really angry with us. They don't really blame us. They understand there's a problem.
But it clearly has a huge impact on them.
Yeah, and also my patients, because it's long-term health that I deal with, my patients are having difficulty getting their benefits. My patients are having to go to food banks. My patients are asking me to write supporting letters to prove that they're still eligible for their DWTP pensions or PIP, etc. And, you know, 80% of people that are on benefits do actually win their claims when it goes to tribunal. But the system, the whole system, and, you know, Theresa Coffey's just come from the Department of Work and Pensions. She's now in health. I'm not very confident that she's going to make a very good job of this now.
Donna, can I ask you about where the nurses are going? Talk about nurses leaving. Obviously, some are simply giving up on the profession and going to find work elsewhere. But am I right to say quite a lot are looking to find work abroad as a nurse in places like Canada, the US, Australia, and so on? And what's more attractive about being a nurse in those countries than it is here? What are they offering that we're not?
I think more pay is probably one of the things, but also a better quality of life. You know, that work-life balance has to be really good. You know, let's not be sort of, you know, pedantic about this. Our jobs are really stressful. There's a lot of emotional contact to it. There's a lot of physical contact to it. You need a really good work-life balance to make it sustainable. You have to be fit, healthy, happy, relaxed, not worried about bills, all those kind of things to be able to, you know, work and provide the care, the essential care for patients.
And just lastly, Donna, on the specific thing that Therese Coffey says, she says, look, it's ultimately people's choice. We can't argue with that. She says if nurses do leave, then she'll simply replace them with people abroad. Is that a problem? And if so, why?
Already, 50% of NHS nurses are from other countries. They've been recruited from abroad. Yes, it is a problem, not because they aren't good workers or we don't want them. That's not the issue. The issue is that we're now stealing nurses from very developing countries like India. We have got agreements that won't poach nurses, say, from Bangladesh, for example. So, there are restrictions on who we can actually go to recruit and which countries we can use. But also, one of the things that really concerns me about her comments, well, we'll just get nurses from abroad, she's implying that those nurses from abroad will work for less pay and poor work conditions. What does that say? She's actually implying that they'll be prepared to put up with things that the British nurses won't be. And that is very worrying.
And when they do come here to work in the NHS, do they have to undergo further training, or are they already qualified when they come? Is there a sort of a process to work in the NHS that perhaps they have to go through before they're up to speed?
Yeah, there is. I mean, the Nursing and Midwifery Council has programmes for up-training or retraining nurses that have either left the profession and want to come back, or nurses that come from abroad. And trusts themselves have really good programmes for international nurses. So they would be, probably more highly supervised to start off with. They'll do the additional training, the mandatory training, all the kind of training that we would expect all our own nurses to have. And also, obviously, most of them are graduate nurses as well, to be fair. Sometimes there's issues with language, so there'll be training in English, there'll be other sort of schooling that people will get, things to integrate people into the communities and things. I think that's really important that we do that we make sure that that's done. But I think the other thing that's not often talked about, and sort of Teresa Coffey doesn't mention this, is that they do have to pay to come. They have to pay for visas. There are conditions on family members coming with them. And actually, at the moment, I believe, and I could be wrong on this, I'm prepared to accept if I am wrong on this, but at the moment, they're coming on temporary visas, so they're leave to stay for 3 years before they can reapply. Right. To stay longer. So that, again, these nurses have got a lot of pressure on them. They've left their loved ones, they've left their homelands, they're fitting into a system that's very different from their own working systems. And then they've also got the additional pressures of paying to come. They might have to go back at some point, and they're away from their families. I mean, we saw this quite a few years ago. Maybe about 20 years ago, we had quite an influx of Filipino nurses into the UK. A lot of them came to the health service, but some went to care homes, etc. And some of the people that I was talking to, they're fabulous workers, really committed nurses, but they were living in really poor rental accommodation, or they were having poor work terms and conditions. And I think that I'm not sure what the safety net is for these workers that are coming here to work, where they do get the support that they need when they're living in communities, etc.
Donna, thank you. Great to speak to you this afternoon. Donna Hales there, NHS nurse, member of the campaign group Nurses United. Over to you now. If you work in the NHS or you've had experience with it recently, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's happening. 4850 or tweet at LBC. Donna Hales joins me now, an NHS nurse and member of the campaign group Nurses United. Donna, very good evening to you. Let's start with those. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. Let's start with those comments Therese Coffey made. Your response to them, Donna?
I think, first of all, Ben, you summarised things really nicely and raised some very important questions that we need to direct